Welcome to the County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives, hosted by County Manager Scott Johnson. This podcast is your behind-the-scenes look at what's happening in county government and across our community. We'll talk about the services, projects, and decisions that make Columbia County a great place to live. We're glad you're here. Thanks for listening to the County Compass. Now, here's Scott Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the County Compass, the podcast that keeps you connected to the people, projects, and progress that makes Columbia County one of the best places to live, work, and raise a family in Georgia. I'm your host, County Manager Scott Johnson, and today we're going to be taking a deep dive into House Bill 439. I've talked about the homestead tax relief process and the bills and where they are and how they progressed. But now we have some exciting news to share. And rather than just giving you a tidbit of information, we're going to dive deep into what this new House Bill 439 looks like, where it is, what it does, how it works, the whole nine yards. Essentially, this legislation opens the door to really meaningful and locally controlled property tax relief through a tool that is referred to as a homestead tax relief grant. Now, the state has had that tool for some time, the ability to be able to give tax money back to residents, but the county doesn't have that. We've never had that ability. Cities don't have that ability. So we're really excited about that. We're going to walk through the how we got here, what the bill actually does, what you can expect as a resident of Columbia County in terms of real relief on your tax bill, and why this could truly set Columbia County apart as a place that really does put its residents and its homeowners first. So to understand why House Bill 439 is such a big deal, we got to step back and talk about the bigger picture. There's a lot of counties in Georgia. Georgia is prospering. It's still, again, the number one state to do business in for I can't remember how many years in a row. But like other counties in Georgia, Columbia County is experiencing tremendous growth. And that growth brings good things. It brings new schools. It brings better roads. It gives us more commercial opportunities, expanded services. But then it also drives up property values. I would dare to say that most people in Columbia County have experienced significant growth in the value of their home, which is a good thing. That's probably most people's largest single investment, and you want your investments to increase in value and not decrease in value, and that's happening here in Columbia County. But the way the calculation works, if you go back and look at some of our other, or listen to some of our other podcasts, we talked about how taxes are calculated, and property values are a key component. 50% of what your tax bill is your value or your adjusted value. So as property values rise, property taxes rise. So our residents, we know, have felt that pressure. We've talked about this. This is probably one of the two or three most common things we hear in Columbia County, that taxes are high, or that people are getting a pressure because of those. And we've done the best we can. But even with what I would consider strong fiscal management and millage rate discipline on the county's part, that rapid appreciation in home value it ends up meaning higher tax bills. We can lower the millage rate, but if the value of the home is increasing at a rate that's faster than the millage rate decrease, then obviously people are going to have higher tax bills. So we know that. We've heard from you loud and clear that you want tax relief in this county. So we want to make sure that we can keep homes affordable, especially for our working families, our seniors, and our veterans. That's always been a top priority for us, to make sure that we provide that relief. So over the past several years, we have taken several proactive steps in reducing taxes in Columbia County. Last year, you'll remember, you had the opportunity to vote on an additional homestead exemption in Columbia County. Currently, the state gives you $2,000 towards your homestead exemption, and Columbia County Board of Commissioners actually asked for local legislation, and then we put that on the ballot last year, and it passed, allowing for an additional $8,000. So now that's a total of $10,000 in homestead tax relief. And that's a good thing, and that's both on the county side and on the school side. We've also carefully managed our budget to avoid tax increases. I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, since I've been your county manager, and that was in 2011 when I was given this opportunity to serve in this great county, we have not increased your property taxes or your millage rate one single time. As a matter of fact, we've rolled the millage rate back every year with the exception of 2020, which was COVID, and there was so much uncertainty that we left it the exact same, but we didn't raise the millage rate. There are many years we've rolled the millage rate all the way back to what's called the rollback rate, which is supposed to be the net even of the increased property values and then the millage rate. So if we lower the millage rate and then as values increase, hopefully that will net itself out. So we've done all those things, and we've done that while still providing you high quality services that you expect. Columbia County residents don't let us just skate by. You have an expectation of high quality services, of excellent public safety, parks and recreation, infrastructure that supports our quality of life, road improvements. Those things are ongoing. So we have to figure out a way to do that. And that's why the Columbia County Legislative Delegation thought that it would be a good idea to champion legislation in this session to give local governments like ours the flexible tools that we need to be able to deliver that relief, rather than relying on the statewide mandates that really don't fit every single community. Now, some of you will remember that our homestead tax relief in Columbia County started out as House Bill 1156, sponsored by Representative Gary Richardson, and signed on by every member of our delegation in the House, and then also our senators, Senator Max Burns and Senator Lee Anderson over in the Senate, worked hard on that. We had House Bill 1156, and we had House Resolution 1178. We'll talk about those later. One was the mechanism. House Bill 1156 was the mechanism to provide the tax relief. And House Resolution 1178 was a constitutional amendment that we needed to remove the cap on homestead tax relief grants. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But unfortunately, House Bill 1156 and House Resolution 1178 didn't make it to crossover. I reported on this podcast that we were cautiously optimistic that it would, in fact, make it, but it didn't. So we didn't give up. We knew that there had to be a way in this session to provide property tax relief. So we went back to our delegation to figure out what we could do. And we were able to find House Bill 439, which if you search that in the Georgia General Assembly, you'll see that there's a previous version of that. It was a bill that was introduced last year that didn't have anything to do with homestead tax relief grant, but it did make it to crossover. And since our legislative sessions are 2 years and not one, the bill was still alive. It was sitting over in the Senate. So we had Senator Lee Anderson and Senator Max Burns work on the possibility of taking House Bill 439, gutting the language out of it and putting new language in that was essentially the same as House Bill 1156. So more than one way to skin a cat in the legislative process. So we got House Bill 439, worked on in the Senate, got it passed in the Senate, thanks to the leadership that I've already named, and then we sent it back over to the House, working very closely with our delegation and also with the Speaker of the House. I am very glad to say that it passed the House as well, and now it is sitting on the governor's desk waiting on a signature, and we are optimistic that the governor is going to sign this legislation and provide this historic tax relief for all of Georgia, but specifically for Columbia County, because we're ready to put it into action as soon as we can. So I want you to understand that this is not about shifting burdens or cutting essential services. There's a lot of talk out there about how do we provide property tax relief in Georgia. And with 159 counties and over 537 cities, it's tough to pass a one-size-fits-all because everybody's different. And Columbia County is kind of somewhere in the middle, but we find ourselves being unique a lot. So there's no way to pass the one-size-fits-all. But there are some suggestions out there that maybe we replace property tax with sales tax, kind of the way Florida has done that. And I know that the leadership in the House and the Senate, both of them, are very keen on trying to provide property tax relief. But at least some of the propositions out there have to do with raising the sales tax. So we're shifting that burden just a bit. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. That's kind of a user pays type scenario, but I'm saying it's shifting the burden. The other way to do it, obviously, is to cut services. cut taxes and cut services, but we don't have the luxury of doing that in a fast-growing county like Columbia County. You're requiring more services, not less, so we had to figure out a way to pay for that. So rather than shifting burdens or cutting the essential services, this is about using what I'm going to call found money. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but even in your personal budget, there are times where you may get a bonus at work. You may save for a vacation throughout the year and then not spend all of your savings. Whatever the case may be, if you have additional revenue, some way that it was just still in your account at the end of the year, what we want to do is we want to take that found money, that leftover money, to establish a local homeowner incentives adjustment grant program that will go straight back to the homeowners with targeted tax credits. And that's really the idea here. It's just what House Bill 439 does. It enables us or gives us the ability to provide that true grant back, because the way it is right now is you pay your taxes in. I have no way, the government has no way, the county, the cities, anybody else in Georgia besides the state, we have no way of returning that to you if we don't need it. So we historically have underspent our budget in Columbia County, and as we underspend our budget, that is what I would consider found money. So what do we do with that? Currently, we put it into a capital improvement fund that allows us to do some of the projects that we talked about, infrastructure or whatever. But the commission is saying, Scott, we need to figure out a way to give it back to the taxpayers. If we're going to tax them and we don't need the money, we need to give it back. So let's figure that out. House Bill 439 does exactly that. It establishes that grant program. It is subject to voter approval. So if it's signed by the governor, which we are cautiously optimistic that it will be, it'll be on the ballot in November, and you'll get to pass that, and then we'll get to work on funding the program right away. So here's how it works. We would actually dedicate a local homeowners incentive adjustment grant program, and the money going into that fund, like I said, would be any excess funds that we have from either the general fund or other available sources, any windfalls we may have. So think about it like capturing efficiencies and growth dividends and then turning them into this homestead tax relief. That's kind of what we're doing here. All right. So once the fund is established and funded, the county can issue these homestead tax relief grants in the form of a dollar-for-dollar credit on your tax bill. And they apply specifically to homesteaded properties and your primary residence. So I want to pause there for just a second just to remind people this is providing significant tax relief for our residents. But if you'll go back to my comments earlier, we're trying to target the people that own their home, the working families, our senior citizens, our veterans, people in the community that are living in this house and these taxes are rising. We want to do something about that. So a couple of key points that you ought to know about House Bill 439 is that the relief is applied as a credit. So you'll have to pay your taxes first, and then we will credit it back on that tax bill, the amount that we can. It can exceed your actual tax liability, so you're not going to get back more money than you paid in. You're only going to get back hopefully we get to the point where we can give you back everything you paid in. That is our goal, is to completely eliminate your homestead property taxes. The amount of the relief is actually going to depend on how much money is available in the fund each year and the number of qualifying homesteads. So we'll fund it, and then we'll look at the amount of homesteads, and we'll do a little math problem there and figure out how much we can give each person back, and then we'll apply that to your bill. And then the program will be ongoing once it's approved by voters. But the county can only fund it when the funds are available. So there's no borrowing for this program. There's no deficit spending. There's also no taking this money out of this fund and doing something else with it. Once we establish it in this Homestead Tax Relief Grant Fund, once it's there, it stays there until it's needed. It's my goal as the county managers to be able to robustly fund this grant program to the point that we will have plenty of money to provide 100% tax relief for homesteaded properties in our county. So that's the goal. That's what we're going to be working towards. It's very different from traditional homestead exemptions, which reduce the assessed value of your home before taxes are calculated. Again, this is a direct credit and money taken off of your final bill, and it's flexible and can be adjusted year to year. So I say that not to make people say, well, they're just going to start out and give us this big tax break, and then all of a sudden they're going to wean it down. It's the opposite. We're going to start out with what we can afford and hopefully get to the point where we can completely eliminate your property taxes. So now we get to the question that really everybody wants answered. Scott, what kind of tax relief can the county residents actually expect? Well, the honest answer to that, it really depends on several factors, but the potential is significant. Like I said, the potential is completely wiping out your property taxes. But first, the amount of relief will scale with the size of the fund that we're able to build. So we're going to try to go ahead and seed that fund, put some money there, set it aside, again, not being used for anything else, no deficit spending, no borrowing or anything like that. So we're going to want to do that. And then in a strong fiscal year, when we have healthy surpluses, we're going to add those surpluses to the fund, and then that would mean meaningful dollars towards your homestead credit. And in a leaner year, the relief would naturally be a little more modest, but still targeted directly at homeowners. The money's not going anywhere else. Because it's a grant program, the Board of Commissioners would have the ability to prioritize or structure the credits really in a way that really makes most sense for our community. So maybe we target certain areas or areas of groups. Maybe we could look at seniors or look at, I don't know, there's just lots of ways we can look at that. But again, our goal is to provide it for everyone. So kind of compare this to the status quo where we are now. Remember, I told you get a $2,000 credit from the state on your value, and now you have an additional $8,000 from the county on your value. That's a total of $10,000. But that $10,000 is your amount that comes off of your big number. So, for example, you have a $100,000 home. It's taxed at 40%, right? So your tax liability on that $100,000 home is $40,000. 40% of 100, and then you take off the 2 plus the 8, so you're going to subtract $10,000 from that, and now you're going to be taxed on $30,000 on your $100,000 home. Okay, so that's what historically we have done, but House Bill 439 adds another layer. You're still going to get that. You're still going to get those same credits. But what we're going to do is we're going to then figure out what that math equation equals and use the money in House Bill 439 to give you a credit. So on your bill, you'll see that you owe X amount of dollars based on your $30,000 of value that you're having to pay taxes on. That equals X amount of dollars you have to pay in taxes. And below that, you would see a homestead tax relief credit of the same amount of dollars, hopefully, to get you to zero. That is absolutely our goal. So for the typical Columbia County homeowner, even a modest credit of a few $100s is going to be helpful, and it's going to add up over time to kind of help you offset those assessments. For families, it can mean more money in your monthly budget. Think about this. A lot of us escrow our taxes and insurance, and at the end of the year, if your taxes go up, your mortgage company is going to send you a statement and say, hey, we got to put a little more money in your escrow account because your taxes are going up every year, your insurance is going up every year, so we're going to have to take a little bit more. So now your house payment is going to be X more than what it was last year. So what we really want to do is we want your mortgage company to call you and say, I don't know what's going on in Columbia County, but your taxes are going way down. So instead of escrowing all this money, we're going to send you a check back for the amount that you've escrowed this year that you don't need, and we're going to adjust your payment down to what it looks like your taxes are going to be next year. So now your house payment's actually going to decrease as a result of this program. Now, I know there are people sitting there right now scratching their heads saying, there's no way some bureaucrat is telling me that they're going to give me money back and give me tax money back. That's exactly what I'm telling you. I don't like to be called a bureaucrat, but it is what it is. It's exactly what I'm telling you, folks. There are no smoke and mirrors here. This is your government working for you and trying to find good solutions to the problems that we have. So for that to happen, again, we have everything in place now, minus the governor's signature, and you voting on it in November, and then we get to put this program in place. So I'll make sure that we provide you clear and transparent information on the exact amounts once the program's up and running. So we'll do that through our website. We'll do that on tax bills, public meetings, even future episodes of this podcast. So when I get to the point where I know exactly how much it is, we'll make sure that you know exactly how much it is. So here's what really excites me about 439. It positions Columbia County to lead the way in this innovative homeowner-focused tax policy. We've kind of talked about this. Many places in Georgia are feeling this pinch, but we can demonstrate that with smart governance and living within our means, we can still attract quality growth and manage our resources efficiently, and then that will translate into these tangible benefits, for the people who call Columbia County home. And it sets us apart as a county that doesn't just talk about affordability. We deliver on that, and it reinforces our reputation as the great place to live and raise a family and retire. Businesses, you need to pay attention to, because knowing that our workforce can afford to live here, it strengthens our economic vitality. It also gives us the ability to use the existing sales tax to potentially offset some of your business taxes. So even though we're talking about homestead property taxes here, there's a lot more to be said for what may happen for businesses and if you have rental properties and some of those things. So did want to say, I mentioned it before and I want to mention it again, how hard people worked on this legislation. Really, it was Representative Gary Richardson over in the House that started it, and Senator Lee Anderson over in the Senate that started it on that side when it shifted to House Bill 439. But the rest of our delegation did an outstanding job working this legislation. I also want to give a shout out to Chairman Doug Duncan and Vice Chair Allison Couch, who have been extremely involved in this process, making multiple trips to Atlanta, multiple phone calls to representatives, to the Speaker, to the leadership in the House and the Senate, to the governor himself, just working on your behalf, doing exactly what they should be doing as your elected officials. So I just want to make sure that I give all of them kudos. The rest of the commissioners as well. All of our commissioners have been engaged in this process, and really everybody that advocated to advance the legislation. I want to make sure that I gave them a shout out because they really deserve the credit for getting this thing over the finish line and getting you the tax relief. So what happens next? Assuming the governor signs it into law, we'll prepare the referendum for November. And then when you go to the polls in November to vote, you'll have the ability to vote on this. If approved, we could begin providing relief as soon as the following fiscal year. And then your credits would appear on future tax bills. So we're ready to go. We're ready to go, and we're actually eyeing some money now to use as seed money in the Homestead Tax Relief Grant Fund. In the meantime, I would encourage everybody to stay informed, attend your Board of Commissioners meetings, watch them online. You can watch them on our YouTube channel. You can listen to them as well if you don't have time to watch them. Visit our website for updates. Follow our social media. Talk with your neighbors about the importance of responsible tax relief that still protects services while easing the burden of homeowners. Have those conversations with people. And we'll continue to provide that straightforward, factual information. No spin, just the facts. You can make an informed decision based on that. So with that, we are coming to an end of this episode, but I always like to end with the most ridiculous thing I've heard lately, and this is a recent statement. It has to do with House Bill 439. I will reiterate that I'm not on social media, but I have a lot of people that send me screenshots and want to get into discussions about things that are happening on social media. So this one particular one, I'm not even sure who's behind it or who said this or whatever, but it was a citizen that was talking about House Bill 439 that had apparently read the bill and had questions about the bill. I've not heard from any citizens about this, so nobody's called me about it. But this particular person was really questioning the government's ability to pull this off. Didn't like the fact that voters had to vote on it, but I thought that's what our residents wanted, was the ability to be engaged in their government. So that was an issue, talking about the fact that it had to be voted on. And then there was some conversation about it being voluntary. Well, it is voluntary, but so is rolling back the millage rate. And I think Columbia County has done an outstanding job of proving that we're going to do that and provide tax relief where we can. Go back and look at your millage rate 10 years ago and look at it now and tell me which one looks better. Columbia County is delivering on the promises that we've made as it relates to tax relief, and this would be no different. And then last but not least, that the money could be used for something else. So we're going to put the money over there in this fund and then pull it out when we need it. We're going to use it for something else. Folks, that's ridiculous. We're going to put the money in the Homestead Tax Relief Grant Fund, and that's where it's going to stay until we give it back to you in the form of a grant. So go back 5 years from now, and when somebody thinks something happened and said, well, Scott Johnson said in a podcast so many years ago that this money is going to be used for this. It's still going to be used for that because that's the intent of the legislation and it's the intent of the money. It just kills me sometimes that, somebody told me, Scott, if you passed out, gold bricks, people would be upset about the kind of bag you gave it to them in. And I think that's true. I think people have decided that they are either angry with the government or they're angry with me or they're angry with the commissioner or they're angry with the governor or they're angry with the president or they're angry with somebody. And it doesn't matter what we do to try to help. People just aren't going to understand. Or they're not going to want to understand, or they're never going to get on this team or that team or whatever. Fine. That is fine. Everybody has the ability to do what you want to do. That's what makes America a great place to live. But as far as this is concerned, House Bill 439, there are no smoke and mirrors, folks. We have worked our rear ends off to provide you meaningful tax relief as quick as possible, and that's exactly what we intend to do. So that wraps up this episode of the County Compass. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would ask you to subscribe to our channel on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Leave us a review. If you have an idea for future show topics, send them our way. We'd love to hear from you. More importantly, thank you for tuning in and being engaged and a part of our Columbia County community. Your input and participation is making our county stronger. Take care.
This has been the County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you taking the time to stay informed about the issues, initiatives, and people impacting our community. And we sincerely hope today's conversation helps you better understand the work being done in Columbia County. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. As always, visit Columbia County's official website or social media channels for additional information. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.